and welcome to part 2 of stuff I had to build last minute for my short film. This is a quick and cheap way to build an animal stop-motion puppet. Like most of my puppet projects, I started with a sketch. I print it out or just draw it in the exact size I want my puppet to be. I then use some aluminum wire to build the armature. There isn't too much to explain here, I just bend it following my sketch. Just one quick tip though, don't make both front or back legs one piece. Or if you do, just make sure that the wire is long enough to wrap it around the body a couple times. Basically, you never want to be in a position where you move one body part and another part moves with it. All of your limbs should be strong, independent limbs who don't need no other limbs to move. Now that that's done, go boil some water and heat up some thermoplastic. This stuff is great. Once it turns clear, it is moldable. But be careful, it's obviously very hot. Me personally, I'm fine though. I don't think my fingers have nerves anymore at this point. I added little magnets to the feet that I ended up not needing, but they can be really useful if your table is made from metal. I also forgot to add a tail here. Just don't tell anyone, no one's gonna notice. But of course, if you want one, this is the stage, you should add one. Another thing I did, which I forgot to film, is that I stuck a piece of threaded bar into the butt portion. The plastic will mold around it so that it can then later be screwed in and out. This is where I will later screw in the rig. Anyhow, I now use the thermoplastic to stiffen the parts of the body that should not bend. Caputo, you playing in the background football is a bit annoying, thank you. You want me to throw it? Okay, baby, okay. You may notice I wrapped a second, thinner wire around it. Not sure why I didn't film that, but it helps keep the plastic in place. Now come the fun part. Cover the whole puppet in foam. I use thread to keep it in place while the glue dries. Once it dries, use scissors to shape it into place. And of course, I lost the footage of me doing this. Sad, but it's honestly pretty straightforward. You just use scissors to sculpt the body into what you want it to look like in the end. And I made mine a bit too thick. I then grabbed some stretchy fabric. The kind doesn't really matter. It could even be an old t-shirt, but it should be thin and flexible. I wrapped pieces around the body and started sewing them into place. I didn't really follow a rhyme or reason here. I just tried to hide the seams in areas where folds would occur naturally. Slowly I work my way up the camel. Sometimes it is difficult to hold the puppet in the right angles, so since I tend to sit like a little gargoyle anyway, I like holding things between my knees. But in this case, I feel like I should be censoring this. This looks like a penis. On an unrelated note, but I didn't know where else to bring it up, I need to teach Capo how to use a chair. Anyhow, after covering the body with fabric, I bust out the polymer plate and start sculpting the head. Caputo, stop playing football! I use a little tea light oven nearby to harden my work in between steps, as I hate nothing more than accidentally squashing stuff I have already sculpted. I sculpt the area. Caputo! Damn it! I sculpt the ears separately so that they can be posably attached with wire. I don't know if that's a real sentence. I should of course add here that this version of the puppet will not be able to move its face, unlike the big version I made with the replacement mouths and faces. But that is a much more complicated process for another video. And in this case, really not needed. The puppet will be on screen for like 30 seconds tops anyway, so why even bother? Once the head is fully baked, I then hot glue it onto the body. I then sculpt the clawed feet of the camel using 2-part epoxy clay. Because that stuff hardens on its own and doesn't need to be put into an oven, which I of course wouldn't be able to do with the whole puppet. I actually tried that once, but the thermoplastic obviously immediately melted and gooped all over the place. Once the feet are done, I sprinkled some hot glue onto the head and then pulled over the fabric to glue the body permanently to the head. After the fabric of the neck was properly attached, I then cut it off and used a little bit of epoxy clay to smooth over that area. You can use a bit of water to smooth out the epoxy. After the claws of the feet were properly dry, I used little snakes of epoxy to smooth out over the claws to make them look like they were actually coming out of the feet. I did this, of course, as usual, out of frame. Then I bust out my paints. Whenever I make a stop-motion character, I mix a lot more of the paint that I use than I actually need. I then fill it into these little cosmetic containers, so that whenever I need to make changes or paint new faces for that character, I can use the exact same paint without having to color match. In this case though, I haven't used these little pots in very long, and turns out they're actually really bad at keeping acrylic paint. The long bottles are fine, but the little pots dried out. I tried reactivating them with water, but it didn't work. So I had to remix those colors. I'm trying to color match the adult version of the camel. Even though they're never gonna be on screen together, they should match. I start by spreading one layer of thin paint onto the camel. I never had an issue with paint cracking on the fabric, but if you do, I suggest using fabric paints. I then add the same markings and shadows that I did on the adult camel. For that, I reference pictures off screen. When I did the original adult camel, I followed this drawing. The whole style of the film is supposed to be stop motion mixed with comic. That's why shadows and highlights on this camel are very square and separated. You can of course make smoother transitions. I'm very sorry about the lighting in this particular video. My ring light broke, and I am also broke and therefore cannot afford a new one at the moment. The camel also gets some stripes at the bottom of the feet. That's because it originally was a cat. Don't question it, just roll with it. So here's the adult camel and the baby camel side by side. I think it turned out pretty well. The legs are a bit thicker than I wanted, but that's fine. And yeah, this is what it looks like in the finished product. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and if you have something to say, please comment, so I don't feel like I'm speaking into a void. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!